And we are delighted to have Stuart Wolf here as our guest speaker, talking about a really fascinating topic about, well, let's just start a new medical school, you know. And we were reminiscing that when Stuart was here, we were still plating our own urines before all the procedures, so we knew what the antibiotic sensitivities were. When we had people came to the clinic, we still spun the urines down and actually looked at them with a microscope, where you put your eyes in the microscope. But Long Hospital had been finished, and the University Hospital that just tore down, those ORs were not functional when you were here, but for Jack and I and others, those ORs were still functional. So Stuart is just an amazing human being. I remember when he was here, he says, we're going to go do laparoscopy, and he went to St. Louis with Ralph Klayman, and then went to Ann Arbor and really created an amazing place there at Ann Arbor, and then got scared of that white stuff. Where's Wilson? Wilson, you know, there's white stuff in Ann Arbor in the winter. And so he migrated south down to Texas, and was very fortunate to be able to be at the headwinds of a brand new medical school. So it is truly an honor to introduce a friend and a colleague and a member of our department from way back, Stuart Wolf. Yeah.
Thank you, Marshall. This is it really is just incredibly special to be back here. I finished residency 29 years ago this past summer. So I was, finished in 1994. So almost 30 years. It's almost half my lifetime ago. Finished residency here, and it was really, great 6 years of my life. It's great to come back, see some old friends, some new friends. I see Tom, fantastic. A few of the faculty were here when I was here. Tom, Marshall, Dr. Makinich, of course. Good to see you, Dr. Senahara. Unfortunately, don't see Peter here. But it's really great to see all these old friends and new friends. So we're going to talk a little bit this morning. This is not a talk I've given before, so I'm experimenting on y'all. And yes, I do say y'all. I'm now a Texan. I say y'all, and I have nice boots. So okay, all right. Moved down to University of Texas, as Marshall said, 7 years ago, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the journey that we're going through down there in Austin. I do have 4 disclosures. None of them have to do anything to do with this talk, but 2 of them are because of Marshall. He got me involved in these. University of Texas Dell Medical School, and it's called Dell Medical School because usual naming opportunity, the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. They only had to pay $50 million to get the name of the medical school. Can you believe that? That would buy you a door at UCSF, maybe a building, but certainly not a medical school. But anyway, so there it is, Dell Medical School. So it was created in May 2012. The Board of Regents of UT created the medical school. It was at the time, Austin was the largest city in the country without a medical school. $30 million a year funding directly from UT system to the school. And then a few months later in November, the residents of Travis County voted to approve a $35 million a year funding from taxpayer money from increased property taxes. So we're supported both by the state and the local community. Our first dean was Clay Johnston. Dr. Johnston was a UCSF person. He was, I think, vice dean for research, if I remember correctly. And he brought a lot of UCSF people to Austin. It was kind of the joke. We were, UCSF East, including my current chair, a man named Kevin Bozick, who some of you probably know. The first class started on July 5th, 2016. That's super easy to remember because that was my first day as well. So my first day as a faculty member was the first day of the first class of what I consider the newest and coolest medical school in the United States. Now, a very important thing here is this, and I'm going to be referring to this several times throughout the talk, and a lot of the themes of this talk are going to relate to how the medical school relates to this other entity. This other entity is Ascension Seton. Seton is the name of a local hospital network, and a few years ago they joined a national chain called Ascension, so now they're called Ascension Seton. And through the affiliation agreement that was established with the voters in November, we are joined to them at the hip. All of our clinical work, we have to offer collaboration with them before we can do it with anybody else or on our own. This one here, is there a pointer here? I think, yeah. Okay, this University Medical Center Brackenridge That was the main public safety net hospital of the entire county, 2 million people. The only level 1 trauma center in that entire area was that one building. It was the oldest continuously functioning public hospital in the state of Texas until it was torn down in 2017, and a new hospital was built across the street from the medical school. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this, very importantly, this hospital system is completely distinct from the University of Texas. They are a local hospital chain. Now, another important thing about the medical system there, about Brackenridge, now called Del Seton Medical Center, is that we are the safety net system for the entire Travis County. 2 million people. We are the only hospital that welcomes the unfunded. Now, Texas is quite different than California. There's no Medi-Cal, there's no Meditex. 25% of Texans are uninsured. It's the highest uninsured rate in the country. So there's obviously a lot of uninsured care. And that's primarily what University Medical Center Brackenridge did, was care for those people. So we took that system that was a safety net trauma center. We built a medical school next to it. And we said, okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to recruit all these faculty who are going to bring in all these specialty cases and fill our hospital with tertiary and quaternary care. This is a slide that I borrowed from the dean, and she put together for a talk a few months ago where she talked about some of the leaders in our faculty, and it's actually pretty impressive. I don't want to toot our horn too much because it's mostly not about me, but we've got some pretty impressive people. Jane Edmond is the president-elect of the American Academy of Ophthalmology. My chair, Kevin Bozick, is president of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. Charlie, the chair of Psych, is president of their professional association. George, who's the interim dean, is the president of ABOG, and I'm the president of ABU. So I'm the wimpy guy among them. All the rest of them are chairs. But of course, Jane was the only one who got her picture on a banner outside the university stadium. And not just leaders, also a lot of clinicians. Really some amazing clinicians were drawn to Austin. And it was all for the same reason that I went there, to build a new medical center. These were mostly people who at some point, somewhere along the way, got a little bit disillusioned with traditional academics. I'm not dismissing traditional academics. I did it for 20 years. It was a wonderful career. It was fantastic. But I just felt that at some point in my career, I wanted something a little bit different. That's why I went to Austin to build something. And that's why almost every one of these people is there to do the same thing. Okay, so let me talk a little bit more about the school now that I've given you that introduction. Our mission statement: to revolutionize how people get and stay healthy by improving health in our community, evolving new models of person-centered multidisciplinary care that reward value, accelerating innovation and research, educating leaders who transform healthcare. We'll talk about that a fair amount. And then redesigning the academic health environment to better serve society. I'm going to focus more on the second and the fourth. The mission of our own department is similar: transforming the health and lives of the diverse communities we serve through innovation in surgical care, research, and education. And I want to focus just for a second on the word diverse here. And what we really mean when we say diversity here is socioeconomic diversity. So I think I already mentioned how the hospital we work at is the public safety net hospital for Travis County. And then we're laying on top of that all this tertiary care. And the goal is to take care of both those populations and everything in between in the same building, in the same clinic. So in my clinic, it's actually really great. I'll go see the homeless guy with the big renal mass, and then the very next patient I see is the rich lady from Westlake who has incontinence. And I'm seeing in the same clinic with the same staff with the same processes. And my group finds that really exciting. And a lot of people at the university are attracted to that mission. All right, 3 pillars of academic medicine: education, research, and clinical care. First, education. That's really where we're doing the best job so far, frankly. Right out of the park, we started with this. Whoops. Okay, there we are. So the curriculum at UT Austin is pretty unusual. They do their entire preclinical work in their first year. So what all of us did in 18 months, they do it 12 months, from July through June. So 50% faster. So awfully hard, but they get it all done. And in fact, they do very well. The first year, our first class took step 2. They had the highest median step 2 score in the country. First year ever. Now, 50 kids, hand-picked, new medical school. Obviously, we had a bunch of advantages there, but still, obviously, the curriculum was working well. We've been very happy with it. And what happens then is their second year, they go directly into the clinical arena. So what we all did our third year, they do their second year, which means they have an extra year. So their third year is free to do independent research or get an additional degree. About 2/3 of students get an MPH, MBA, or MS, or some other degree with no extra time. So in 4 years, they're double degreed. And then their fourth year is similar to other years. I think our students are very well prepared. I think it's a novel curriculum. They've done a really good job. There's a lot of focus on leadership in the medical school curriculum, trying to cultivate self-awareness, making these kids really good at collaborating, and a lot of leadership, feedback agility. The idea is that we want to turn them not into just good physicians, but good leaders of physicians who can tackle our new challenges. And we want them all kind of driven by the chance to teach others and influence others and to try to make our health ecosystem better. Just a little bit about urology. We're doing okay there. There's only 3 of us in our group right now. But we have 50 students per class. And of the first 4 years, we put 4 years through the match so far. The 5th year is coming up. In the first 4 years, we had students going to urology, and 3 of those 4, 2 each year. So a total of 6 out of the first 150 kids went into urology. It's about 4%. You can see here the places they matched. And this year, we have 3 going up. We'll see how that goes. They all got more than 20 interviews, which sounds great, but I don't know if you all know that in the new way of doing things, 20 interviews actually isn't unusual. That would have been crazy back in my day, but that's kind of normal now. And then we have 3 more coming up the year after that, we think. Okay, talk about research briefly. There we are. The basic science work is pretty limited. It's very clear as a start at medical school, it takes a long time to build the infrastructure for a big basic science research outfit. We don't have that. So we focus more on health services, focusing on systems and populations. And one of the great things about research at our place has been collaborating with colleagues on Central Campus. So we have this very, very large public university, one of the largest in the country. And a lot of life science is going on in that place. They've never had an ability to collaborate with doctors locally. They've had to go to Dallas or Houston or San Antonio to get medical collaboration. Now we have that collaboration on campus, and that's just been really great. And that's really where our research has taken off. All right, I'm going to spend most of this talk talking about clinical care. I think that's what we're going to be most interested in. So notice I changed the picture there. Go back a little bit. That is the picture of a medical school. All buildings at University of Texas have 3-letter names. So this is the HLB, the Health Learning Building. This is our clinic building, the HTB, Health Transformation Building. And this is where we have our clinics, outpatient clinics, and our ambulatory surgery center. So here's the campus. So here's the first one I showed you here, the Health Learning Building. That's the medical school. And then just on the other side of the creek, or as we sometimes call it in Texas, a creek, there's a the Health Transformation Building, the clinic building. This is our, of course, research building, health discovery building. We can't call things by normal names at UT. We're not allowed to. You have to call them weird things. And then what's this in the middle? Oh, this is interesting. Look at that. Dell Seton Medical Center at the University of Texas. Oh, okay. So we are Dell Medical School at the University of Texas. This is Dell Seton Medical Center at the University of Texas. Well, they've got to be the same thing, right? And you would be wrong. They are completely separate. That is the Seton Hospital. So patients, everybody else thinks, oh, you're part of the same thing, that you're all one and together, right? No, they're completely separate entities. Now, this is not that unusual. There's a lot of medical schools in this country that don't own their own hospital. But most of them, not all, but most have pretty well established funds flow agreements. So if you're at Mass General Hospital and you work with Harvard, or you're at Presbyterian Hospital in New York and you work with Columbia, they're separate entities, but there's a funds flow model, right? So the medical school hires the faculty, supports the faculty, recruits the faculty. They bring the cases to the hospital gets facility fees. Hospital gives a little cheddar back to the departments to make it worth their while. Great system, works well. But you can also have a fully integrated system like you have here in California, like we had here at University of Michigan, where y'all own, for the most part, your own hospital, except for some of these outlying ones that y'all are looking at. But your central hospitals, you own them all. I assume you don't own the county. I assume that's owned by the city, right? SFGH, yeah. But except for that, which is a separate entity, you own your own hospital. So you're fully integrated. This is a completely disintegrated system. There is no funds flow here. So we bring in, Charlie Nemiroff and Kevin Bozick and Jane Edmond, and they do all these big cases in the hospital. Kevin's an arthroplasty surgeon, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest moneymakers for a hospital is a joint replacement. And the hospital says, "Oh, that's very nice of you. Thank you so much for bringing those cases. Can you do more of that, please?" No, we're not going to pay you for that. We're just going to provide the hospital. Thank you. So there's no fund flow. So that's been a problem. And this is kind of the root of where I'm going with a lot of this rest of this talk is this poor relationship between the two. Hopefully no one from Seton is here. I might lose my job. Okay, so now I'm going to pivot a little bit before I get down into the weeds about the hospital issues and talk about the general clinical work of UT Health Austin. UT Health Austin is our clinical arm. All the UT schools, it's the same in every school. UT Houston, UT Health Houston, UT Health Tyler, UT Health Lubbock, UT Health San Antonio. We're UT Health Austin. So I'm going to focus on three things: outcomes, practice redesign, and alternative payment models. So first, outcomes. The idea is that you want to measure results that matter to patients, not the ones that matter to us, the ones that matter to the patients. That's primarily functional status measures and mental health measures. Now, I could go into a whole primer on how you do musculoskeletal PROs, but I will tell you just a little bit about our musculoskeletal clinic, which is probably the most prominent one in my own department. Every patient who goes to that clinic gets an initial set of patient-reported outcomes that involve not only their condition-specific functional scores, either PROMIS or HUS or KUS, depending on what you have, but also a number of mental health screeners: anxiety, depression, and substance abuse. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I bet there's not a whole lot of urology clinics in this country that give their patients anxiety screening before they come into their clinic. Well, it turns out it's important. Go figure. Then they get follow-ups too. So anyway, here's very briefly, here's the HUS. HUS stands for hip disability and osteoarthritis outcome score, joint replacement, HUS JR. There's also a KUS JR for knee. You can see that about half of the patients who come in have severe dysfunction. Now, this is the mental health screener. A little bit, there we are. And here the scores are flipped. But if you look at this, you can see that a quarter of the patients have moderate to severe depression. Now, this is a population that we know is pretty enriched for mental health problems, people with joint pain. But it's probably not a whole lot less than your average general urology clinic. And isn't this going to influence how you manage patients if you know if they're depressed or anxious? And the answer is yes, it does. And that's one of the things that we try to look at UT Austin. Skip over this. Okay. So to get to those improvements, though, you need to redesign how you deliver care. And that's what we're talking about now, our new practice models. Looking at integrated interdisciplinary care, or what we call an IPU, an integrated practice unit. And then that's the organization. And then underneath that, or after that, is a dedication to continuous redesign. Y'all have probably heard plan, do, check, adjust, that cycle of quality improvement. We try to do that all the time. Now, I use the word try. To be honest, we fail more often than we succeed. But at least we have our eyes on it and we're trying to do it. So IPUs were really, that term is kind of coined by a group, by two authors, Michael Porter and Elizabeth Teisberg from Harvard Business School. This, I think, was in the 90s, if I remember correctly. Michael is still there at Harvard. Elizabeth actually came to Dell and she was on medical school for a while, helping us design our clinics. And she now works at the School of Business in her own Healthcare Value Institute. And they kind of coined that term, integrated practice unit, IPU. And we'll talk about what that is in a second. So we opened our clinical arm in October 2017, about a year after the medical school started. These first three, whoops, my bad, sorry. These first three were pretty traditional or IPUs. These were IPUs: neuroscience, musculoskeletal, women's health. The work life was basically a glorified workman's comp clinic. It wasn't an IPU, and frankly, it didn't ever work out well. We started it after about a year because we could have good contracts, and that's a recurring theme I'll come back to as well. Here are smorgasbord of clinics now. It's obviously grown a lot. Not all of these are IPUs, only some of them. Some of them are just kind of regular clinics. All right, so talk a little bit about the concept of an IPU. So imagine this is current or recent healthcare in Austin, Texas, in Travis County, which is the county where we live. And let's say you have a problem and you go visit your PCP. Okay, great. And you have a joint problem. So now they're going to refer you to a specialist to go, but now you have to drive a little bit more towards the center of the city to see that specialist. And then that specialist says, okay, we're thinking about surgery, but you need to lose some weight and we need to do some testing, yada, yada, yada. So then you kind of drive around and you have to go to all these other places to get all these other things done. Super convenient for the provider. That's great. I just get to sit in my office and all the patients come to me. This is a sweet job. Not so much for the patient. So the idea behind integrated practice unit is to flip that, okay? And that's what we're trying to do at UT Health Austin. So the idea is that we put the patient at the center and we bring all the services around them. So for example, when you come to our musculoskeletal clinic, you will literally see at the same visit, you will see a PM&R doc, your orthopedic surgeon, you'll get your x-rays at the same place. If physical therapy is part of the plan, you'll see the PT. If you score positive on your screener, you're going to see someone in psychiatry or social work, and you get your labs at the same time, all at the same visit. Now, this immediately speaks to a potential downside of this, and we'll go over this in a second. I'll allude to it a little bit right now. In that traditional system, let's say that patient went to 6 different offices. Each one of those 6 offices got paid full boat for their services. When you do this, you don't get paid full boat. You get paid basically one fee, maybe 2 or 3 if you can slide in some of these others with some coding tricks. But you're basically not getting paid for all the services you deliver. That's the problem with this sort of practice. Unless you're completely vertically integrated, it's really hard to have it make sense. But it does work really well for the patient. So some of the characteristics are, we have, for the real IPUs, we have a pre-clinic huddle before every clinic, and they go over all the pre-collected PROs in the history of every patient to kind of establish a plan of care before the patient even hits the door. You know, how often are we scrambling in clinic trying to find records with Mrs. Jones waiting in the room for us? This is all done ahead of time. Very expensive, but it works really well. A really big emphasis on setting goals with the patient during the clinic, realizing that having the patient engaged with the goals of care really improves the outcome. The clinics are set up to have close clinical collaboration. There's a central bullpen, and then all the clinics are exam rooms are around the bullpen, and there's 2 doors to each room. So the inner door is the one the providers and the clinicians use. The outer door is the one that the patients use. So you see a patient, you come on in, and all of a sudden you're with everybody you can interact with to collaborate on that patient. And then being a startup medical school in a system with a mature private practice referral network, we have to be very cognizant and careful about not pissing off our referring doctors. So a lot of emphasis on making sure that we communicate well to the referring doctors, we send them back out. Doesn't always work. I alluded a little bit to the problem with the payment system, and there's probably some people in this room who are a lot more expert on APMs than I am. I'm just going to tell you a very high-level summary. The concept here is that we have this little IPU thing that's works focused on outcomes and practice models, but we need to now readjust the reimbursement. So the reimbursement is also focused on that similar type of value. You remember the value equation, right? Value equals quality over cost. And you can increase the quality or decrease the cost. What's not apparent in this equation is that these entities accrue to different parties, right? The quality, that's what the patient cares about. Patient doesn't give about the cost, at least not in our current system where insurance is basically a prepaid phone card. It's not really insurance. That's borne by the employer, or first the insurance company and then ultimately the employer. So that all of a sudden sets up a disconnect right there. And this is one of the roots of our problems with our American healthcare system, of course, is that these properties accrue to different people. And the other problem is that the cost in our system where I talked about, we have all these people seeing the patient at the same site. Our cost is lower because we can bill less, not because we haven't provided the care. We've had to pay those people the same salaries. They just can bill less. So yeah, we've reduced cost by reducing our own reimbursement and going broke in the process. So not a really sustainable model. So the problem is that we have to make value-based care work in a volume-based system, which is really hard to do. Because it's all about the money, right? The money is the root of it all. So how are we going to make this work? No margin, no mission, right? All right, so this is this is probably the simplest APM there is, a case rate, very similar to a capitated plan. But the idea is that as the provider, you own all these things that otherwise might be separate entities. And if you own them all and you can deliver care at a lower cost, you can actually reduce your own costs because you don't have to hire as many surgeons. You may not need to do as many labs because you've been able to be more efficient and provide better care. Several problems with this. Problem number one is that if you don't own everything in that care plan, you can't accrue the benefit. And we don't because we're a small little practice. We don't run the ED. We don't have our own pharmacy. We don't have our own hospital. The anesthesia group is a private practice group. So we can't touch these. So we can do the world's greatest job making all this efficient, but costs might still be high because of all this stuff. The second issue is that we have, I'll be frank, and again, hopefully no one is here, we have pretty piss poor data systems at DelMed. There's probably no one in the world who's happy with their IT group, right? Is that possible? Anyone here really happy with their IT group? Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't happen, right? It's a horrible job. Who would want to do that? But ours is really bad. I mean, the whole, to prove that you're delivering good care with this type of system, you have to have data to show it, and we have not collected the data very well. And the third problem is that we're very small. We're a rounding error. I mean, if we go up to a, Walmart and say, hey, we want to do joint replacements for all your people in Texas, they look at our capacity and say, you've got 2 joint surgeons and 2 PM&R docs. You can manage like 0.5% of our patients. Go away. You're bothering us. So we're just too small to make a difference. So those are the 3 issues why this has not worked. Just a brief little segue. This is my baby. This is what I've been focusing on a lot of the last few years. I'm the medical director of the UT Austin Ambulatory Surgery Center. It's our effort to try to get in some of that piece of the facility pie. It's a pretty large facility, 2,300 square feet. We have overnight stay capacity, 4 ORs and 1 shelled out, and some good, nice recovery rooms. It's really a beautiful spot. And what's been a lot of fun, this has been one of the most fun things for me coming into Austin. I got to help design this. So I was part of the group that put this together. And that's really fun to get to work in the building that you helped design. And you say, well, I did that wrong. I'll do that better next time. Or gosh, that's working out better than I thought it would, or whatever. It's a lot of fun. And this has been really one of my greatest source of professional satisfaction in the last few years is getting to run this. So what I just told you is what we've done currently. Okay, now for the last few minutes, and this talk is going to finish pretty early. We'll have a lot of time for questions. I'm going to tell you about the future state. So here's the campus I showed you already. Okay, here we are. So now what's going to happen next year? Well, next year, that Irwin Center is going to come down. So what that was the basketball arena and a practice arena. Those are getting torn down. The basketball program got moved elsewhere. And what we're going to do, build in their place in about 5 years, is 2 new hospitals. MD Anderson Cancer Center at the University of Texas. MD Anderson is the largest cancer center in the country, and they're owned by University of Texas. And a Texas Medicine Specialty Hospital, also owned by University of Texas. So remember we were having all those trouble with Ascension and we couldn't get them to collaborate and they wouldn't work with us? We finally said, fine, we'll friggin' build our own hospital. And we did. And notice that on the map now of the UT Austin Medical Center, that hospital is no longer even listed. It's just a blank spot. We're still going to work with them. We're still going to collaborate, but we basically have said our aspirations are no longer limited by you. We're going to do what we want to do. And credit goes to, I'm sure he's not a super popular guy in this state, but credit goes to Governor Abbott, Dr. Pfisters, the head of MD Anderson, President Hartzell, president of the UT Austin, and Dean Claudia Lucanetti, our new dean, who came from Mayo, and then two of the regents. They did a pretty nice job. They handed us $2.5 billion. Sweet. We thought 65 million a year was pretty cool. Now we got 2.5 billion to play with. This is pretty awesome. So I had a slide earlier where I showed you about the fragmented system in Austin, and frankly, most cities have a fragmented healthcare system. That was related to the patient's experience. The facilities are equally fragmented, right? You've got your primary care specialty clinics, you've got your hospitals, you cancer care someplace else, imaging, pharmacy. The idea at this new medical center is just like we did with the IPUs, is we're going to just try to bring it all together. Now, we will admit we can't be everything to everybody. These hospitals are each going to be about 300 beds each, so that's 600 beds. You can't build a huge, all overarching academic medical center with only 600 beds. That's not enough. So we will provide cancer care. We'll provide outpatient care in our current setting, the one I'm working in, and then the specialty hospital that we're building. But we're still going to need to partner. We'll partner with the local children's hospital, which is actually, although it's owned by Seton, it's actually very differently. And it is actually quite academic. They're actually great partners. The community hospitals in the area, because we'll have to have some collaboration with them, obviously. And we still will have to collaborate with the trauma center. I mean, I'm a urologist, right? I'm a stone guy. A third of my patients show up in the ER. So I have to obviously be part of the care there. All right, so the idea is that we're going to put together a foundation of integrated academic system of care that will bring together great clinicians, educators, and scientists to treat patients, train future generations, accelerate the discovery of new knowledge related to preserving health. This is important, as well as addressing disease. It's not just health care, it's health, not just health care. Very importantly, we want to leverage Austin's university strength and corporate opportunities to create an innovation network by attracting elite partnerships and investments. So Austin, I'll show you that slide in a second and what I'm talking about. So the idea is that underneath it all, we'll have this ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship. On top of that is the university with all of its different colleges, some of which are more aligned to research, some of which are more aligned to education. And then the medical school is where the clinical practice will live. It's all part of the academic medical center. That's a world-class destination medical center. This obviously is our aspiration. That's not where we are now. So I talked about the corporate entities. This is probably pretty small for San Francisco. I mean, I'm talking to the mother lode of healthcare sciences here in the Bay Area. But you have to remember, we've only been doing this for a couple decades. We're pretty new in this business. We have over 260 life science or tech companies in Austin. And heretofore, there has been no one for them to partner with. The local systems haven't been interested. There's no academic health system. So who do they do work with? They have to go outside. We now have what will hopefully soon be a world-class medical center that they can partner with. So bringing them in and making them part of this is a big deal of building these two new hospitals. Now, to get there, we're going to have to do a few things. We're going to have to keep DelMed curriculum at the forefront of medical education. Our goal is to train a workforce prepared to lead in this rapidly changing healthcare environment. We're going to show you another slide about entrepreneurial culture and mindset. Again, that's one of the reasons I'm there and why a lot of other people are there too. We've got to advance scientific knowledge for the benefit of patient care by prioritizing and investing in transdisciplinary research with a focus on discoveries and applications that translate into preventions and treatments addressing unmet needs. And finally, we're going to deliver compassionate, culturally sensitive, high quality, integrated multidisciplinary care. We have a very diverse population in Austin, and we want to keep focusing on them. One of the main strategies we're going to use to get there, and I'd be interested to know if this is something you all do at UCSF, is this concept of a dyad partnership. So in many organizations, there's a physician leader and or an administrative leader but they're kind of separate entities. So the focus here is to create dyad partnerships where the physician leader and the administrative leader are really co-equals in trying to advance the organization. They do something shared. There's some things the clinician does, some things the administrator does. We have a few of these already. I am the fortunate recipient of one of them. My administrative director, I'm the medical director of the ASC. Our administrative director is a woman named Jessica Hovland. She's already called me twice this morning. I call her my work wife. She calls me her work husband. We don't agree on everything, but we disagree respectfully, and we usually work towards the common good. I'm not her boss. She's not my boss. We're co-equals, and it's really a great relationship. So we think one of the ways to move this organization forward is to have a lot of that type of dyad relationship. All right, so what's some of the guiding principles? Big focus on culture, values-driven, collaborative, team-based. When I recruit faculty to my group, I don't recruit for skills. That's the baseline. That's like accepting someone in urology residency. Yeah, your scores are okay. Okay, now what? So my now what is culture. My now what is can you fit in with the rest of the group? Very person-centric, integrated group practice. Again, the focus on integration and group. This word called, it's not my word, boundarylessness. Okay, whatever. But the idea is that you cross conventional organizational boundaries to seek help from those whose expertise is needed. You open up the organization, removing walls, getting rid of silos. You know, we are a new organization. Our medical school has been in existence for only 7 years, and we already have silos. Are you kidding me? After 7 years, there's already silos? But you have to very, very consciously work to prevent those. And then 2 mentions here for those of you who are leadership trainee aficionados. Level 5 leadership, Jim Collins, I'm a big fan of his, wrote several good books a decade or 2 ago. This is from his group called Good to Great. Good to Great is where he defined the properties that made some companies go from good companies to great companies. And one of the key ingredients is what he called level 5 leadership. And that's basically a leader who is maniacally ambitious, not about themselves, but about the organization. Very important. And servant leadership by a guy named Greenleaf, a book from the 70s, kind of similar. A servant leader is more focused on developing the careers of the people around them, not their own career. These 2 work together. Okay, so I talked about an entrepreneurial mindset, creativity and innovation, critical thinking. Very important to have a both and mindset instead of either or. Okay, I talked about the populations we're trying to serve. For example, it's indigent community care, both indigent community care and advanced referral care, that sort of thing. You need to be adaptable and comfortable with uncertainty and failure. When I recruit people, and we do, obviously, as a growing medical center, I'm constantly interviewing new candidate faculty for our Department of Surgery, and given my role, I usually have to interview all of them. I make it very sure they understand you need to be comfortable with chaos and uncertainty. If you want to get up every morning and know what you're going to do that day, don't come here. You shouldn't be here. Growing, always growing, future orientation, intrinsically motivated, not motivated by money or whatever, and motivated by what's inside you. And obviously collaboration and communication are important. All right, so to finish up, what are some next steps? Well, it's all hands on deck right now. That $2.5 billion we just announced in mid-August. We want to have a strategic plan in place by next spring. So we're just working maniacally to get this done. We've got, I think, 12 or 13 work groups, practice work group, IT, education, ambulatory care, all these things. Most of the leaders like me are on at least a couple of work groups. We're reaching out to potential partners, but as I alluded to before, our future will not be limited by their aspirations. So yes, we're reaching out to Ascension, but if they're not willing to join the ambitious game we want, we're leaving them behind. Sorry. Central Health, I didn't mention them before. They're the funding body for all that money that comes from the county. They are actually the healthcare agency in Texas. That's the way it's set up. Each county has its own separate entity that manages the health of the community. So we need to partner with them to make sure that we appropriately care for the indigent in these new hospitals. And then, of course, obviously development, where that 2.5 billion is now coming from the coffers of the state of Texas. There's going to be a lot of development money in that. And I didn't mention already, I should have mentioned already, we obviously have some pretty interesting negotiations coming up with MD Anderson Cancer Center. So the way it was announced, Dr. Pfisters, the president of MD Anderson, said basically, MD Anderson will be building a new MD Anderson hospital in Austin, Texas. And Dean looked at it, he's like, really? That's not what I was thinking. So that's still to be determined how that's going to work out. I suspect it'll end up being an arm wrestling match. Lucky, I think Claudia's pretty tough, and I think she'll win. But basically, y'all, I am like a kid in the candy store right now. I got to go to the coolest new medical school in the country. Someone just handed me $2.5 billion to play with. So I'm having a blast. So the tagline at UT is, what starts here changes the world. It's pretty arrogant, I'll admit. However, Wilson, not as arrogant as University of Michigan. The tagline at University of Michigan is, the leaders and the best. I mean, come on, really. Anyway, yes, are we being bold, rash, and audacious? Absolutely. And it's a bucket load of fun. Thanks so much for allowing me to come to share this with y'all.